Anybody here been to Scotts Bluff? Willing to admit it? Talking about diversity now. I was out there in 1992, first and only trip. And I was out there doing some workshop. I'm doing a workshop just like I am here today. And I learned a great diversity lesson in Scotts Bluff, Nebraska that I'd like to share with you today. Okay? Now, let me just go out on a limb here. Not very many African Americans out in Scotts Bluff, Nebraska. I know I'm out on a limb, but not a whole lot of the brothers out there in Scotts Bluff, Nebraska. There's brothers, but not brothers. Okay? And so I was out there doing a workshop, and I realized that in Scotts Bluff, Nebraska, there is a great sense of culture. Put it down. You see it there on your page. Culture. Now, what is culture? Culture is everything that makes us who we are, and we all have culture. We all have culture. Every single body, every person in this room has some semblance of culture. Okay? Whether it's the things you eat, the things you do, the traditions you have, the language you speak, your native language, another language, we all have it. Culture. Okay? Let me just, well, I'll tell you later about the culture I'm going to talk about. So I'm out there and I'm walking through the gymnasium, and there's 3 boys following me throughout the gymnasium. That's right. 2 little white boys, 1 little Latino boy, Mexican boy, following me throughout the gymnasium as I'm waiting between sessions. And I'm curious, why are they following me? Everywhere I go, they go. And so what I realized is that culture provides a perspective. Perspective. Our culture provides us with a way we see things. And guess what? In Wellston, the only way I was going to see things was from my young African-American isolated eyes. Everything else was strange. Everything else. And wouldn't it be interesting for me to be shipped out of Wellston as a guinea pig experiment to a Catholic, all-male, wealthy private school? That's right. 8th grade, a teacher in Wellston wanted to see if a kid from the hood could make it in a private school to get a better education. So they took me and another young lady, shipped us out of the community to this, some 25 miles from home, into this private school environment to see if I could make it, see if I could be successful, to see if I could graduate, to see if I could, whatever. Well, I'm standing here today because I was successful, but it was a cultural shock. First of all, there was no girls there. That was probably the biggest shock. It was all male, not co-ed. But here's the crazy thing. You know all that Days of Our Lives stuff I was watching? It actually worked. Because when I got out to the wealthy private school, they were just like the people on Days of Our Lives. Stop it. Okay, stop it. Culture provides us with a perspective. So, but here's the interesting thing, and remember what I said earlier. The question isn't, do I have a perspective? The question is, depending on who's strange and who's familiar, do I have a perspective of value? Now, here's what's happening in Scotts Bluff. Those 3 boys were following me. And why were they following me? Because they thought I was somebody important, other than John Harris. That's right. They thought they had encountered a celebrity. Huh? And you say, well, what celebrity? Well, I'll tell you in a second. So they were following me, and they thought there was a celebrity in their midst, and they were tracking him. That's right. And because not only does culture give us a perspective, hopefully if that perspective is a perspective of value, you want to get close to the person that you're valuing. You say, well, John, who was it? Who was that celebrity that they thought you were? Let me diffuse this right now. It wasn't Al Roker. Okay. It wasn't Al Roker from NBC. Okay, stop it right now. Because I have gotten that in the airport. Al Roker? How much better looking than Al Roker? Are you kidding me? I wanted to punch the person. I mean, they really thought, hey, Al Roker. I'm like, Al Roker, are you kidding? You know who they thought I was? These kids. Now, again, think about it. 1992, Scotts Bluff, Nebraska. What was happening in the world in 1992? What was happening was that it was time for the Olympics. Huh? And that was the first time NBA players got to play the Olympics. And the kid walked up to me and said, "You're Magic Johnson and we want your autograph." That's right, that's exactly what he said. And I'm looking at him going, Magic Johnson? For those of you who remember, I just was excited that he hadn't thought I was JJ from Good Times. Some of you will understand what that means. Dynamite. So at least I could handle Magic Johnson. and just by way of identification, let me just take you back to back in the day. Oh, that's yours truly right there. Look at that. Huh? What's the number? What's the shoes? Converse. The high socks, the whole deal. And look at this guy, totally confused right here on the no-look pass. Totally confused. So all my life, all my young life, I played ball. I wanted to be Magic. I wanted somebody to identify me as Magic Johnson. So I get old, I get dumpy, I get to Scottsbluff, and guess what happens? But what does it mean? It means that even in that culturally isolated place like Scottsbluff, or even in St. Louis where I was, we can get information, right? That does not keep us from information. The question is, does that information provide us with something that might help us to be more familiar than detached? And so these young boys took the information that they got, and they made a very interesting Aristotelian philosophical equation. Let me give it to you. Magic Johnson is black. Man in front of us is black. Man in front of us is Magic Johnson. Huh? That's how they did it. They just put it together simply. But what they figured out was that Magic Johnson was a celebrity. We see him as a person of value, and we're going to get close to him. Because that's what we do. We get close to that which we value. The question is, what do we value? Or why do we not value certain people from different places? I didn't value Latinos in Wellston because we didn't have any there. Didn't know anything about them. No Native Americans, the very few Asians, and everybody else. Didn't need to know them and didn't care because my life was only Wellston. And as I began to venture out, thank goodness for the private school. Thank goodness for a college education. Thank goodness for a professional life that has now taken me all over this country and beyond to learn more about different things. And now I'm closer to valuing people at a higher level, and people are less strangers and more familiar because of exposure. And here it is, friends, information that's real from real engagement. Okay? Real engagement. So these kids, now here's the question. $64,000. John, come on. Did you sign Magic Johnson's name for those little boys? Did you do that? What you think? You doggone right I did. You doggone right I did. After a bit of an explanation, I had a little explanation. I told him that I wasn't Magic Johnson. And the kid, they were kind of disappointed. And the one kid just said, well, would you sign it anyway? Yeah. I mean, they had taken all that time to follow me around. They figured I might as well get an autograph, All right. We press forward.